Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Medium's Porch. I am your host, Kathleen Boldt, and I am here with a guest from LILYDALE. We are continuing our conversations with LILYDALE mediums today on the Medium's Porch. And if you've seen us before, you know that we cover the process, the privilege, and the power of spirit communication. So our mediums are coming to you from the LILYDALE community. These are registered mediums that have been vetted by the LILYDALE Assembly. And those of you that are coming to visit us this summer, you are welcome to come onto the grounds and come and see a medium. Now, it is recommended that you book your medium in advance because a lot of our mediums are pre-booked for the season. So if you can hop on our websites, definitely check that out. It is on lilydaleassembly.org where you'll find the list of mediums. Now, our guest today is a special medium. She has been doing podcasts and supporting the LILYDALE community with her services for many years. And if you are been watching the LILYDALE Assembly shows, you will know her by the name of Colleen Vanderzyden. So we are interviewing Colleen today. You know, when you're the podcaster, it's kind of nice when someone else interviews you for a change. So we have that opportunity today. Colleen is a minister. She is a musician, if you didn't know that about her. She is our LILYDALE radio host, as I've mentioned. She is the author of Courageously You. So if you're looking for a book that supports you achieving your dreams, that is a wonderful source for you. And she is the leader of the Soul Empowerment community. If you're looking for a personal coach or a medium, Colleen may be your person. So let's get to it. Hello, Colleen. Welcome to the show today.
Hi, Kathleen. Thanks for having me. So much fun.
I am so glad to have you here. I know that I've been watching you for quite a while on the podcasts. How did you get started doing the podcast? How did that all come about for you?
Well, that's actually an interesting story because I started on A1R Psychic Radio. And in 2015, they contacted me and asked me if I would do a show. And I checked them out and they seemed legit. You never know because we get some weird emails, right? But I was still teaching in the public schools then. And I said, I'm too busy. I can't do it right now, but contact me next year, and promptly forgot about it. And they contacted me the next year. And so I thought, well, this will be fun. So I ended up doing a show for them, started out just audio, and then it went to video. And so started in 2016. I did that for quite some years. And then I started doing a show here in LILYDALE where I was invited to do a show. And I think it was because they knew I could do it because I'd already done something like that. So I think I'm on my, 8th year of doing a show for LILYDALE. I'm at about 400 episodes between the two places. Can you believe it? 400.
Now, where do you keep all that in the archive if people want to go back and review some of it?
It's on YouTube. Everything's on YouTube. And it's also like, if you go to my website, you can go to, I don't know, it probably says radio or blog or something. And you go to that page and there's a link to, you can just see so many videos. And also a lot of them are on Facebook too. So.
Yeah, so viewers, I'll have the links below so you can scroll down after you've watched this and you can click those links and go do some exploring. So now I happened to see an episode that you did in 2020.
Ooh.
And I loved it because you were talking about the very thing I was thinking about at the time, although I didn't have a podcast, that very experience that we were going through, knowing as yourself, we're spiritual beings and we have a spiritual experience. So even though life throws us curveballs, they end up being an opportunity for us to grow, enrich, and learn, mature, all of those things. And I thought it was fabulous what you were saying along those lines, offering that counter opinion to all the fear that was out there. Do you notice there's been any changes in that since
2020?
Yeah.
Right? I have noticed some changes because what has occurred is so many more people are waking up to the idea or the feeling that there's something different out there in the world. And, 2020 was a traumatic year for many people, and all the changes that happened then, plus everything that was happening in society and culture. And people seem to really have moved into a new way of looking at things. And many are struggling because they're not sure how to handle things. Some are having those mystical experiences and don't know anything about it. We are seeing a lot of people who are recognizing that um, there has to be more to life. There's got to be more. We just get that feeling there has to be more. So there's a lot with that. And that's interesting you mentioned that show, because one of the things I say all the time, and I probably said it 400 million times by now, is that every experience we have is taking us to our soul. So we can use everything we've experienced as a learning opportunity and see what it's teaching us about ourselves. Maybe we have some false beliefs, whatever it might be. And we can use all of that and learn more about ourselves so we can live in our soul's authenticity. And that's what I've been preaching the last year or so.
Yeah, and even as mediums, right? We are people, we encounter things, we can receive and have knowledge about the information, but we still have to put it into practice. We still have to get out there and do our own piece of work around these things, don't we?
Absolutely. And being a medium is quite the career choice, I must say. It's nothing like we can't really practice it ahead of time. You just have to get into that space and do it. But so much of our skills as a medium comes from knowing ourselves, comes from working on ourselves and getting rid of stuff that might be in our way so that we can recognize when we get a message. If we're so caught in our heads, we can't even find those messages to save our lives.
Yeah, there's really something about being a medium. You have to be present, don't you? You have to be present. You do have to put yourself aside so that you can make that space for spirit's information to come in and to be recognizing where it's going, how it's coming, and how to communicate that without your own voice coming into it.
Oh yeah, and one of the things I've seen with newer mediums who maybe aren't as self-aware yet, they're learning, it's all an evolution for all of us, but sometimes our own belief systems can get in the way. And I remember one of my clients, probably about 5, 6 years ago, I have no concept of time, so something like that. And I brought in her brother who had died from an overdose. Now, this was an older woman. She was, you know, by older, I'm like middle age. Okay. And so I had her brother and I said, he is, I recognized he had passed of an overdose. And I said, he is the nicest person. He's so kind and so smart. And, I was describing his personality stuff and she started crying and I was like, uh-oh, like, what did I do? Like, did I say something? Because it was a different kind of thing. It turned out she had been to another medium, not in LILYDALE, but another medium where that medium said to her that her brother had died of an overdose and then went on to say what a horrible person he was, that he obviously had no morals or values, and he was just went on and on about what a horrible person he was. And so, of course, as you can imagine, for this woman in front of me to have had that experience with a medium who went on and on about her brother being a horrible person, which was not her experience at all. And then afterward, I talked to her a little bit about it, and she said, it was so nice that you recognized he was a wonderful person. And I said, sometimes our own beliefs might get in the way. And so this medium's beliefs that somebody who died of an overdose was a bad person kind of colored her reading. And she did not see the spirit clearly who that man really was. So it's essential as a medium for the developing mediums, and I'm always developing, that we stay aware of how we're thinking, what we believe to be true, and always question something, and be careful that we don't impose our own beliefs upon the reading. Same thing. How many people have we had contact us and say, okay, what do you think about gay people? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, I just want to make sure I can have a reading with you. And I'm like, yeah, I got gay relatives all over the place. And I said, I have no problem with anything. And besides, I'm in the musician field. It's everywhere, And I'm like, yeah, I've got no problem with it. But they'd had experiences with, I don't even know what I want to call them, people who were more strict in their belief systems, shall we say.
Yeah, we have to remember we're sitting with a soul, not
Right?
with the choices of that personality, right? I
Mhm.
think we're delivering information at that deeper level. That is our goal. Now, it's interesting that you're saying about that experience that that person had. I think also as sitters, we have to, I've been a sitter myself, right? So it can be difficult for us when we're already coming in sensitive. And hearing something that is something the medium says, and again, there's a communication that can happen there that is a breakdown, and it is possible the medium wasn't being negative but was making a statement about difficulty, but because our filters, I guess that's my point I'm trying to say, as humans, no matter what position we're sitting in, there is that opportunity for us to filter things. So even for sitters, I would recommend that when you come in, be as open as possible, right? Would you say the same thing?
Absolutely. And it's so important to, you know, as a medium, we're picking up on the physical person's energy as well as the spirit energy. And if the person in front of us, the physical person in front of us, is closed or expecting one certain piece of information that is going to prove it, that means their energy is closed. And it makes it very difficult for us to pick up on the energy and for that spirit to come through. So being open is essential. And it's wild. When I start my readings, I have like a 5-minute speech these days, because I want to make sure they know what's going to happen. And I talk about, for me, I have what I call random things. Okay, so I could be describing this spirit. We've established who it is. I've talked about other things. I've explained how I work, et cetera, et cetera. And then I could be talking about something, and I just be going on and on about whatever. And all of a sudden I interrupt myself and I'll go, okay, who fixes clocks? And, I'm talking about something, I could be talking about anything else, but not that. And the words just come out of my mouth. And I'm like, okay, who fixes clocks? And then they go, what do you mean? I said, is it you? Is it the spirit? Who fixes the clocks? And I can't get the other piece of information. I just get this one thing that pops into my head. And then I call it random things. So I said to them, so be open, because these things will just pop into my head. There was one time I was talking and I said, okay, he's showing me lollipops. And I'm going, lollipops, okay. Do you really like lollipops? Like, I don't know why I'm seeing them. And she goes, oh, he called me lollipop. And I went, oh, okay. So it's interesting how like those things will come in out of the blue, don't have anything to do with anything. Most of the time they're right. Sometimes they're amazing. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. And it's so interesting how spirit will communicate that information. So if the person in front of me is open and kind of, I like to feel like we're playing together. We're working together, and it can be fun to connect. Now, granted, if you're in heavy grief, different situation, but for the most part, we can have fun, even though we're talking to people on the other side. And if they're looking at it with an open perspective and anticipating some good things, good connections, the reading will just get better and better and better.
I love that. And it's fun to watch the surprise on their face when somebody shows up they don't expect, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Well, I can't believe he's here. I haven't thought about him in 15 years. Well, let's find out why he's here.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason. Yeah. Yeah. And so many people that come through are coming through just at the right time, aren't they? The spirit intelligence is amazing. They come in when you need them or when they want to give you that boost because they know about that. They knew about that here. So you can trust what they have to say.
Yeah, and it's so essential as well that we're open to whoever shows up. And I remember hearing James Van Praagh say once many years ago that we needed to accept whoever came in because maybe they wanted to offer some healing or an apology or something. That all being said, if we have a jerky person come in, and I had one guy come in once, oh my God, he was such a jerk. And he was still a jerk from the other side, which is not how I've experienced 98% of my readings, right? They always evolve. Well, apparently this one was not ready. And he was still being a jerk. And finally, I looked at the person, I said, you know what? I'm not feeling good stuff here. He's not being helpful, inspiring, anything. Do you mind if we send him away? And she's like, please. So if they're not coming in with positive information, not helpful, which is rare, but if it does happen, they don't have to stay. But that all being said, we at least give them a shot at coming in.
Exactly.
Because you never know. And it could be healing if you're open to the healing. That doesn't mean we approve of any bad behaviors.
No. Yes, I've had that happen too, where somebody's come in and they've done an act that is seen as very challenging, traumatic, difficult for the sitter, and yet they want to make those amends.
Mhm.
So you kind of want to balance that with sensitivity. So as a medium, you need to be responsible with that, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
You obviously have encountered it many times, so you know how to navigate that.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky.
It
Usually I'm like, hmm, you're not very nice, are you? So,
So if you want to talk to me, I have my boundaries. So when you're ready to talk to me, go away, come back, have
mhm,
your balance, and then talk to us. Yeah.
right.
So you start your reading with that 5 minute, maybe not full 5 minutes, but yeah, you got your opening. Is it really 5 minutes? Yeah. Your explanation. You know, the orientation I think is important. I'm noticing more and more because there's so much on the internet coming in telling us all the ways this can happen. And really, like, you know, you and I were talking earlier about how each one of us, we're connecting with spirit, but each one of us approaches that differently. So I'd like to know a little more about how, if I came to you for a reading. So if you start off with those 5 minutes, then where do you go from there?
Yeah, so when they first come in, you know, and we'll chit chat for a second, but then I ask if they've had a reading before because that gives me some idea. Not always helpful necessarily, because what I think a reading is, they may not be on the same wavelength, but we
Mhm.
figure it out pretty quickly. Then I usually explain that we're talking to people on the other side. Okay, I had two people last summer. They literally said to me, yeah, that sounds like somebody, but they're dead. And I looked at them and I'm going, that's kind of the point. You know, like they had totally did not understand what I was doing.
They
So I
didn't grasp
explained that.
what the relationship
Yeah.
was, right?
Yeah, they didn't realize I was talking to spirit on the other side. And so that was confusing for me because I was like, you know, so I've got to make sure I explain what mediumship is sometimes, right?
Sure.
So
Mhm.
I say that, and then I usually say something about how I work. And I usually tell people things along the lines of when we think of mediums, we're so used to hearing the stories or seeing the stories on TV or something with, oh, I saw a spirit over there, you know? And I do not see spirit. And I know some mediums see spirit like it's a physical person in front of them. I see things in my mind's eye. But interestingly, if you show me a picture of who I'm talking to, it does not look like who I see in my mind's eye.
Mm.
So they are showing me whatever they need to show me to get information through. So I tell people this and I say, I do not hear spirit either, although I may say exact words that they say or have said. I may say exact things. So it's getting in there. So then I say, I am actually a feeler. So I feel their energy merges with my body, and whatever I notice in my body gives me information. So I can usually tell how somebody passes, unless the spirit doesn't want to show me for some reason. So I can usually feel that, literally feel it. And I always tell people, because sometimes you can see them go, oh no. And I'm like, oh, it's only a percentage, small percentage. I feel it enough. And don't worry, it'll go away. You know, so if they've gotten shot, for example, I'm going to feel it, whatever it might be. So then I go on also to explain that with that feeling, I also have a lot of mannerisms. I may act like them, move my hands like them, sit like them. I've been told repeatedly over the years that I look or sound like spirit. Does not happen a lot, but it happens enough. I give people a heads up because if I don't, I get this a lot. And I go, what's going on? What's happening? There, you look just like him right there, you know. And I think it's a flash, you know. It's not like a total transformation, but so I tell them these things can happen, so they know, you know. I want them to be prepared and open, and then I tell them that spirit always comes in over here for me. So if they see me looking over here talking, it's they're in different parts of the room. So I'll be talking to somebody here, here, and here. And it took me a while to figure out the relationship based on where they were in the room, but
Yeah.
it's general. You know, I am not one that goes, I have your great aunt here. That's not going to happen. It's highly unlikely that's going to happen for me. You know, so I have a woman and describe her as I do. What's funny sometimes is I'll be talking, and if I have two or three in the room, I'm talking to one here, you know, like this, and then I'll go, which one is this one? And they're going, I don't know. I'm like, oh, right. Sorry. Because I get in that semi-trance state, you know. And so it's an energetic thing. It's very energetic. And then things pop into my head and I just know them. And I tried, I have it could be a fault or it could be a good thing. I talk really fast when I first connect because I'm trying to stay ahead of my thoughts. So I don't want to get in my way. So I'm like, I've got a man here and da, 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 da. And then I backtrack. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Or I'll say something and go, does this make sense? And if people aren't fast enough, I'm like, come on, let's go. So I try to give enough information that we can land who I'm talking to. And if not, I'll give more and we'll just go from there. So it's a very interesting way to work for me. And the body part is really huge. It's everything, really. It's just everything for me. And I have learned over the years too, that even with that, you know how we all have our own strengths, for a visual person or an auditory person or a feeler, right? So I noticed about, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago too, maybe, that I wasn't paying attention to all my senses. So I had to make sure I was paying attention. Like, not only am I feeling physically, but how am I feeling emotionally? What does it feel like I'm hearing? What does it feel like I'm seeing? And read into everything so I could get that full picture, because sometimes you see something, say I see a train or a train track, even I see a train track and I'm going, okay, my mind might try to figure it out, but I don't want to do that. I want it to come to me. So I'm like, what else do I have? Well, I can hear a train in a distance coming. Okay. Oh, I can see it's right off their back steps. And you would think they hate the train, but they really loved the train and would wave at the person who went by. And then way back, they would pick up the coal pieces that were along and they're like, yes, that's him exactly. My grandfather lived in that house or whatever.
You find that's you in their experience, like you're looking out their eyes.
In a way, yeah, it's kind of both ways. It's like I see a picture, but I'm also feeling myself in that picture, I guess. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. It's a fascinating, it's so multifaceted, right? When we really go deep into spirit, there's so much information that's just sitting there passively that we can access when we're that close to them. And that's where you're saying you're pulling in your different senses. So now when you're shifting your attention to the different senses, you're getting more information.
Yeah. And it's so similar. Mediumship is so similar to how we live our lives.
Oh, tell us more.
Right? So the more aware I am in my physical life, my normal life, I don't know how you might put it, that other part of my life.
To be normal, so you are normal.
Depends what you think normal is. But the more I'm aware in that life, the more aware I am in my mediumship life. So, for example, if somebody's a beginning medium and they don't get names, do you pay attention to names in real life? I am not very good at paying attention to names in real life because I'm more about what kind of person are you? So that's how my readings
take that in first, right?
Right? Yeah. Is it a nice person or not? Is the spirit person a nice one or not? That's how I like to start. Like, do I like your energy or not? And so it's interesting if you want to improve your mediumship, start looking at how you're experiencing your life. If you want to improve your names, pay attention to street names. I still don't know the street names in LILYDALE. I was trying to memorize them the other day. I have been here for years. I'm like, I know what streets I live on. I lived on First for a while, so I know that street. I mean, it's like...
Well, it's interesting you're saying this because it really, spirit uses us and we have some temperance over how that is accessed based on the information we come to bear in the moment. So there's a medium, forgive me for not knowing his name, but there is a medium I've heard about in the UK who has passed into spirit. He used to be a postman. And so when he did his mediumship, he would give names, dates, addresses, because that was his forte in his life. So that totally lines up with what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And we were mentioned before we started about how spirit always gives me something new to work on every year. So I think about some new mediums and, who have taken one class and then they think that they know everything, which is dangerous for all of us, but we think about it, it's a continual evolution, just like life. I think about where I was when I first started doing mediumship to where I am now, and I'm like, ooh, I had a lot to learn back then. and I had a lot of growing to do. And I can look at it now and see where I am now and recognize even this year there's going to be more growing. There was one year I had so many spirits on the other side who were abusers. And I kept thinking, finally, after about, I don't know how many, like 20, I was like, okay, what are you guys trying to show me? Why are you to keep showing me why are the abusers keep coming in and showing me stuff? And I really think it was to help me expand my compassion, and recognize they are souls of love as well. And for whatever reason, their physical incarnation didn't necessarily project that love as much as they might have, So, and when I first started too, I did not want to talk to children on the other side because I can't even watch a movie where a kid dies. I mean, and the last thing I thought my heart could handle was having a child come in. And then I remember my good friend Jake said to me, you are doing a disservice to your clients if you do not allow children to come in. And I was like, oh, guilty. And, so that was after the first or second year. And then I had the most amazing child come in from the other side. And the healing that the mother in front of me experienced was so profound and so touching to me that I was like, oh, I get it. I get it. I'm okay now. I got it. I just needed to realize I could handle it, because I'm very sensitive. So I
You've
could
been mom
handle it.
yourself, right?
Mhm.
You're a mom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that takes it to another level as well.
Yeah. The empathy and the feeling of the person's pain in front of me. And I've met some amazing spirit children, adult children as well on the other side, and the most amazing parents here who I look at some of them sometimes in my brain and I go, how do you go on? Like how, with all these things that have happened, and the strength and the resilience in their hearts is truly inspiring to me, and I thought the least I can do is open myself up and embrace. And then I realized, um, you did you study with Janet? You said you studied with Janet Nohavik.
Yeah.
Okay. So she was my primary teacher.
Oh, she
And
was.
yeah, and I live in her house now too. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, an amazing medium. And I remember her saying something along the lines of, do not get emotionally attached in that reading. So, for example, we hear a horrible story and then we are crying along with the client. That just gets in our way. And granted, there are times where we can tear, it's like, oh my gosh, and the energy comes in from the spirit so strongly that I'm like, okay, hold on, and I usually go, okay, stop now. And then they usually laugh at me. And then, get back under control. It doesn't happen much, but when it does, I know it's a really profound message coming in, but we don't want to get entangled emotionally, or we're going to miss stuff. And now we're vested and we're not objective with what we're getting.
We disconnect from the spirit's experience because we're in our own. So
Yeah, exactly.
we have to stay
Right.
of the road there.
Yeah. And the emotions, I mean, the emotion is so important because that's how the information comes in. Right. So it's a fine balance between allowing the emotion, but not getting caught.
Yeah, you talk about how you explain how you do your readings, and sometimes I have to explain, okay, I'm about to cry. And then I have to explain to them, I'm not going to cry. I just have to say that to acknowledge that that was my feeling, and then I let go of it. And then I don't cry. But I explain to people that, it doesn't mean I'm not caring. It's just, I need to tell you I'm going to cry so I don't cry so I can get back to your spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
When it's
It's
extreme.
amazing. Yeah, the honor to work with spirit, to be a medium. And I do have to say, I think this is the toughest job I've ever had, because it's so important. We have to come at it from integrity and truly do our best. As long as we're doing our best, spirits are good. We might miss things, we might mess something up, but the spirit's like, okay, I'll give it to you a different way. Let me try again. And it works. But it's so important to treat it with that respect. And again, not to say that we can't have fun. Respect doesn't mean we have to be serious, serious, serious. We can have a good time in there, And so it's just it's the depth of it, I think. It's just so profound, and to honor that beautiful presence and recognize that, I mean, how amazing is it? We can communicate with spirit.
So cool. Yeah,
I mean, really, it's like a miracle.
it really is. And miracle, because even though we think we understand what we're doing and we have a grasp of how we work personally, there's this whole other realm of how the heck did spirit intelligence line this all up, and how did they know that I'd be the person that would be able to bring this sophisticated message through as opposed to somebody else? I mean, there's a greater design to it, I believe, when I've watched it unfold, that is really extraordinary.
So true. So true. It's amazing. I was talking to one of my coaching groups last night, and one of the people was telling me about some medium, I'll use it loosely, on TikTok, who was charging an exorbitant fee, like for like 5 minutes. I mean, it was ridiculous. And she said to me, it just didn't feel like it was true. It just felt like anybody could say those things. I said, yeah, that happens. This is why it's important we teach our people, our clients, our audience, what real mediumship looks like, where we start with, I have a man, a woman, a person. We start with that. We don't go with, I'm seeing the color yellow, which tells me you have a lot of personal power. I'm like, that is not mediumship. That
No,
is psychic.
psychic work.
Yep. And obviously, we use our psychic abilities. Absolutely. And maybe later the spirit will say, they have a lot of personal power. Well, that's cool. But we always want to start with that. And then we want to start with some information that proves we're talking to spirit. They passed of a heart attack, or they feel like your father to me, or whatever it is. So some factual things. And I think so many people have watched TV or have preconceived notions as to what mediumship is. And so sometimes they don't recognize what legit mediumship looks like. So we need to be discerning. Does it make sense? But also we want to know if it feels right. The client in our room can tell by the feeling that that person is there. They can feel it, even if they don't feel
Of
energy.
that essence, yeah, that they, I've had some people, you probably had them too, where they come in and they're open, they're ready to go, they sit down, and I haven't even gotten to my prayer yet and they're already crying, and they're like, I'm so embarrassed, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying. I'm like, you're already feeling the power of your spirit person, your loved ones are already here, and you're open enough to pick it up. That's why you're having this emotional shift. Just let it flow, let it be there. You're not going to get judgment from us,
Yeah,
right?
that's for sure. They cry all the time. That's the
Yeah,
way it should be.
we
Touches
know
your heart.
there's this emotion, right? It's in motion. There's this movement that is meant to happen in a reading, so that there is that sense of closure, resolution, and support that's happening.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about the experience of giving someone a session?
I think my favorite part is when I say something I don't expect,
Mm.
or because I get surprised. I'll talk and I'll go, oh, I didn't know I was going to say that, And so I like when something happens like that, or I say something that is um, really meaningful for the person in front of me. And I remember a couple years ago, I happened to catch something NASCAR, the day before this reading. Now, I am not a NASCAR person, as I'm sure everyone probably assumes. And so I happened to see something on TV about NASCAR, and I was watching this race, and I'm like, well, this is so interesting. Well, don't you know, the very next day, I am with this man, and I said, okay. And I'm thinking in my head, am I just saying this because I saw this yesterday, right? So is this legit, or what's happening? I said, okay, so I saw a NASCAR race yesterday. And so I feel like NASCAR is connected with you, and I want racing cars. And he's like, yes, exactly. And I love that. And the person I was talking to, I think it might have been I don't know who it was, friend, father, I don't know. And so the man on the other side was showing me the racing cars. And I was like, wow, so interesting. The spirit on the other side proceeded to tell me how that client in front of me, the changes he needed to make to his race car, because it turned out he did racing, the changes he needed to make to his car in order to make his car go faster. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm talking about, because hello, I play the violin. I know nothing about my car, right? So I am describing parts of the car. And I said, I don't know the name of it. And I'm going, it's like this, it does this. And I'd be like, the meh, meh. And I'm trying to get a word out, right? And the guy's going, it's this. I'm like, oh, okay. And then finally he says, you are describing it exactly. And I just did that to my car. And
Oh,
I'm going, oh my God. So the person in front of me was racing cars, as was the other person. And they loved NASCAR. They loved tinkering with the cars and the demo derbies and all that stuff. That was one of those readings where afterwards I went, I don't even know. How does this even happen? So that was cool. And then I had another guy whose best friend had died. And oh, there was just so much involved with that. And he was a cynic when he came in and he was like, yeah, prove it, but I could tell he really did want to know.
yeah.
It got to the point that he knew that guy was in the room with us. And there's an empty chair in front of me. And sometimes spirit will sit in that chair. And finally, this guy, he turns, he looks at the chairs. Why are you effing telling her all that stuff? And I went, oh my God. He says, why are you telling her that stuff? Nobody knows that stuff. Why are you telling her that stuff? And it was hilarious. I laughed so hard. And then I thought, good job to you, Spirit, for getting through. So he knew that guy was right there next to him. It was so beautiful and miraculous and amazing. So I love those things when something different happens. I also love when the person in front of me goes, oh, I get it. I get it about whatever might be going on in their life, and maybe the spirit gave some insight or not, or at least reassurance, So, and then they're like, so
You bring
it's
up
so
an
much
important
fun.
point, I think, with that second story. You bring up a lot of points I could branch off on, but you mentioned the effing, the word, and I had an experience, and just like that, did you convey the languaging that was coming through?
I
Okay.
usually, sometimes how those spirits will, some of the guys especially, and every now and then a female, they have colorful language.
Colorful language, yes.
Sometimes I usually try to stop myself first and just kind of censor and go, okay, wait a minute. Could I just check? Because I'm hearing some colorful language. Did they use some of those words?
Sure.
Sometimes I can't stop it and it just comes out. He says, da, 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 and they're like, this was just like him. You use the
Right.
same
It
word.
wouldn't come unless it was appropriate. Right.
And so it is interesting, and I've never had anybody get offended or anything by that. They're usually like, absolutely, that is that
Well,
is.
it becomes evidence, doesn't it? Because they would talk to each other that way.
Exactly. Yeah. It's amazing. And to recognize there are so many different ways people can feel that connection. And we might think it's this, but you just don't know. You just don't know.
Yet in a public service, you would tone that down. You wouldn't
Absolutely.
use that language,
Oh,
use the colorful languaging, right?
yep.
Because there's too much at stake there in terms of people's understanding who are not part of that experience. But
Exactly.
one, that becomes evidence. Mhm.
Yeah, in a private session where it's just us together, it's more intimate, and we're trusting each other, and we've got this energetic bond happening. In a public demonstration, it is different, and sometimes because we don't want to ever offend people, and also too, we have to be really aware of what we're saying. Is it appropriate to be said in a public setting? If a spirit comes in and they're talking about something that's not appropriate, I'm not going to go into examples, we can't say, well, he says, And so I have been known sometimes at the public, like the stump or something, to go, well, the words he's using, I can't really say right here, but you know what I'm saying, right? And they're like, oh, yeah. And he's talking about, and I'll skirt it, and just give enough that they know.
Sure.
And it's kind of like we have our own little language at that moment, and other people may or may not understand what I'm saying, but as long as the recipient understands, I'm good with it. So, and it's different vibe doing public demonstrations. It can be so much fun because everybody gets all excited to go, oh yeah, that person, it's making sense to them. I hope I get one. I hope I get one too, So totally different vibe, but a great energy.
May I mention at this point that you're this summer teaching a class on perfecting platform mediumship? which
Yes.
is that very public demonstration delivery that we're talking about. You'll be able to support people in that. So any of our listeners that are interested in learning from Colleen about platform mediumship and doing public demonstrations, she's teaching on July 28th at 9:30 in the morning. And that's a full day class. And you can register for that on lilydaleassembly.org, that website. And she's teaching a couple other classes. I'm just going to jump on those since I'm in the flow of
Yep.
class. I'll come back to you in a second, Colleen. The Courageous Empath, she's teaching that August 3rd. So all these things we were talking about, experiencing the energy, we were talking earlier about being a mother and not being able to witness that child passing, how difficult that is, that's empathy. So if you find yourself being that kind of person, she's teaching the Courageous Empath on August 3rd. 9:30 a.m. Again, you can register on lilydaleassembly.org. And then also she's teaching Finding the Real You. Now, this swings us into something else that Colleen does for people. She's teaching that August 16th at 9:30 a.m. Also register in Lilydale. So Colleen, this last one, Finding the Real You, that's something that I'm sure you bring in through your mediumship, because spirit's always trying to encourage us to be our soul and to support our authenticity and help us with our own integrity and living our best self in the world. But you do that as a coach, is that right? And your book, The Courageously You, talk a little bit about how that whole thing is part of your mission.
Yeah, it's really my passion to help people be themselves so that they can live with as much joy and meaning and purpose as possible, and part of it came, I had my awakening, so to speak, in the year 2000. And I won't go into great detail on it's the first chapter of my book, but I had a message that was be who you are, for who you are is blessed. And I realized I had no clue who I was. I was a stressed out control freak. I can own that. That's who I was. And so after this awakening, I started really trying to learn who I was. So like, why did I respond this way? And after about 6 years, I realized I was happier. And then I kind of went backwards and said, what did I do? I don't even know what I did. And it was all, what could I do to feel better? So I was reclaiming my self-responsibility. What could I do? Stop blaming, stop being a victim, just do something, make different choices. How do you want to live your life? Move in that direction. And so at that point, I recognized I had come up with all these strategies to help myself anytime something went wrong. I got bothered by this. How could I reframe it? How could I look at it in a different way, whatever it is? And those became the magical mind games in my book, which are things we can use to shift our mindsets. So I started doing that. And along the way, I became a life coach and I got certified for that. And I've gone back and forth between a spiritual life coach or an intuitive life coach or whatever. They're all the same to me. I'm just helping people be themselves. And it's so much fun when I'm coaching because people tell me, a little bit about what's going on. And then when I first started doing this, I noticed I was turning and looking here and I'd talk and then I'd go back. Finally, somebody said, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing there? And I'm like, and I thought, oh, I should pay attention because I just do things and I'm not aware sometimes, right? And I realized I was talking to a guide, so whenever I'm coaching, he says, I just call him a he just because the most wise things come out of my mouth and they are not me at all. And he'll say something and I'm going, oh, that's a great idea. And so it's really interesting because I have the training as a life coach, which is, help people figure out how to move forward, not necessarily tell them how. But then I have a spirit guide coach, whatever you want to call them on the other side, who's going, okay, their problem is this, or they need to look at it this way, or maybe it's this. And then I'll say something and then we all go, oh, that makes sense. And so we can kind of see the different things. I am of the very strong opinion on my work so far, could change in 4 minutes, I always say, on my work so far, that every problem we can have can be solved by knowing who we are. And I mean by who we really are at the soul level, the love and the light, and how we express that love and light in the real world. I believe that if we really, really commit to learning about that, we will feel so much better. Unfortunately, it's not an instant solution to anything, but I have lots of strategies to help people get in that direction.
Well,
It's,
whenever you bring that, I mean, the simplest of things, like the red light at, the stoplight on the way to work in the morning, the red light. And if you're in a bad mood and you see that red light, you're going to feel grumpy, cranky. If you're bringing light and joy to that, you'll notice the daffodil on the other corner. So our perspective really matters, and bringing our love and light to us. I think that's wonderful that you found a bunch of tools that you can share with others and that worked for you. That's nice that you're writing the book out of experience, not just theory. I love that.
yeah. And I've used them with clients for years and also shared a lot on my radio shows and stuff. And people tell me all the time that it really helps, and a certain one they love. That's so much fun to see which one they love the most, and I'll use one myself and then I'll switch to a different one. It's like, okay, let's try this one. I'm getting caught in something. Let me go down over there and get that one. So it's amazing because we do have the tools, we do have the skills and the power of choice to go in a different direction. And so many people feel helpless and powerless, a little fear going on, little fear going on these days. So it's important that we reclaim our love, because it's essential that we use our love to help balance what's happening in the world.
So if I was a brand new person to mediumship or life coaching and I was coming to you in LILYDALE, I'm going to be coming and I'm going to need to expect that you're going to give me mediumship when I'm in LILYDALE, correct?
That's the plan,
So
so
spirit loved ones. And then during the rest of the year, you offer all of those other services.
yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. In the summer too, I also do, I call it soul coaching, but it's really spiritual counseling.
Okay. A lot of people do spiritual assessments. I do a spiritual assessment, and that's what it ends up being in the end. You really navigate that person with the help of the guides and ministerial aspects.
Yeah. So it's, the other parts are really spiritual counseling. It's kind of cool, how that works, because isn't everything spiritual counseling, really, in a way,
I guess New York State has a funny thing about using the word counseling if you're not a counselor, but
if you're ordained, you're legit.
Integrating with that person and providing guidance, right? That guiding support for helping them, like you said earlier in the coaching, helping them find their way through something, not telling them how to do something.
Yeah, just giving them the encouragement and sometimes some insight, intuitive guidance.
Different perspectives, the idea that we can make choices.
Yeah, you really can.
So if you choose to see Colleen this summer, there's many different ways you can do it. You can call her for an appointment and book with her. You can get her book ahead of time and read it. It's on Amazon, is it not?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and they can actually make appointments right on my website.
An appointment on your website. Perfect. Yep. That's handy, isn't it? I love that.
That's the easiest.
Yeah. And then if you want to see Colleen, she's doing sharing services. If you're a budding medium, you could come to one of the services that she's sharing and give it a go, give it a practice. And you know that she's doing the class on platform mediumship. So she would be a wonderful chairperson if you're a budding medium to go and attend those services on the 21st of July. That week, 21st on to the following week, to the end of the Saturday there at 1 o'clock, you'll find her at the Stump. And on August 5th, you'll be chairing Colleen from the beginning of that week at 4 o'clock at Forest Temple. So good time for everybody to come and give their mediumship a go when you're there, because you can give them a little guidance, tips and pointers. There was one more thing I wanted to ask you. Anything you want to say about what people need to know about booking with you this summer, or anything else about booking with you that you would want people to clarify or be clear about?
No, just if they go to my website, ColleenVanderzyden.com or BeCourageouslyYou.com, they can see everything I do. I've got a retreat next week. We have the online soul empowerment community where we teach various classes, and lots of in-person interaction a couple times a year, plus all sorts of other connections. It's so much fun. And so we're just out there trying to help people be happier.
Yeah, and you are a partner with Greg on some of these adventures, right?
Yes. Yeah, Greg Unterberger, he and I, we do the soul empowerment community together, which is wild when I think about it, because there's a lot of communities out there, but there are none that are like ours, because you've got me as a medium and as an intuitive life coach, and having been a longtime teacher as well. And then we've got Greg, who's a therapist, a certified past life regression therapist, does something called spiritual activation, and does all sorts of transformational breath work, and also a spiritual teacher. We put our two skills together, and he loves the science part and I like the woo-woo part. And so it merges nicely. He starts talking about science and I'm like, oh, research. Oh, I just can't, I just, so he takes care
Your
of this.
group, because your empowerment community, then you get, you can see it from all different angles. That's really
Yep.
super cool.
It's really awesome. It's a great place. So other than that, you can find me walking around.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing you this summer for sure.
Soon.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Colleen. I could talk to you forever. I feel like we haven't finished, even though our time is probably at a point where we should get on with things. I want to thank you, like I said, for coming. And until next time, dear followers, please walk in the light of truth, dance with your spirits, and trust in the whispers of your own intuition. And remember that we are here to support you, help you, and guide you in your journey with spirit. Be well.